All right, good morning, guys and ladies. Hopefully, everything is going well with you guys today. I wanted to sort of talk a little bit more about the exchange rates that we introed last time. I've got the graph that we talked about here, the same type of graph comparing dollars to yen. We've got supply of dollars, demand for dollars, quantity of dollars, price of dollars in terms of yen. Last time we just took a look at the effect that tastes would have, or quality for another way of looking at the same thing would have, where if there were tastes that were toward, let's say, one particular item, let's say Japanese items that we wanted to get, Japanese goods, then we would have to get the yen to purchase those goods. And so the demand for dollars would go down because we want yen instead. But also the supply of dollars would go up because essentially we're taking our dollars and we're putting them on the exchange and we're trading them for yen. We're taking yen off the exchange. And so that would be another way of looking at it. Regardless of how you look at it, if the price of whether supply of dollars went up or demand for dollars went down, the price of dollars would have gone down. And that's considered a depreciation for the dollar. Now, if you were to look at that in terms of the yen, it's always the opposite. If the dollar depreciates compared to the yen appreciates in comparison to the dollar. So that's always kind of the way that we have to look at it. So just real briefly today, I wanted to go through the three other determinants that are on there that we'll talk about here, and they're the three I's. There is a fourth one called speculation. It's actually on the PowerPoint that I'm sending out. But speculation, it's not something that you're likely to see, even if we were taking the Cambridge test, which we're not. But if you were to take it, speculation that one is a little bit more complex. It's not something we're going to get into, so I would not worry about speculation. What I would worry about are, again, tastes or quality, however you want to phrase it. And then these other three, which are the three I's, okay? The three I's are income, inflation, and interest, okay? And by interest, I mean the interest rate, not your interest in a particular product here, okay? So inflation, income, and interest rate, those are the three I's that we're going to look at in terms of exchange rates. Okay, so let's start with the first one, income. And we've mentioned this a little bit before when we were talking about aggregate demand, and it's going to kind of work the same way as it did in aggregate demand. If let's say that the Japanese, that they are having a boom period, they're having an expansionary period, and so income in Japan is going up. If that is the case, then the Japanese are, since they've got more money, they're buying more of their goods, but then they're also buying more of our goods as well. They're buying more US goods. They're buying more of everything if they're having an increase in income. So what that tells us, if the Japanese income, national income is going up, guess what? The demand for American goods is going up, and that means the demand for the dollar is increasing as well. Okay, so they are demanding the dollar now. That's a demand increase. By comparison, the supply of the dollar, if you like the supply thing as opposed to demand, you look at supply and go, okay, well, the supply of dollars is going down, at least on the exchange, because the Japanese are taking their yen, they're putting them on the exchange, and they're taking the dollars off the exchange so that they can buy American goods. So the demand is going up or the supply is going down. Well, guess what happens there? Regardless of which one you choose to go with, if the demand is going up, that's a price increase. If the supply is going down, that's a price increase. So either way, in that scenario, the dollar appreciated and the yen depreciated. So it doesn't really matter which way you look, whether you focus on supply or whether you focus on demand, same outcome. Okay, next one here, inflation. We don't typically think of inflation as being a good thing. Pretty obvious, right? Price level goes up. That means we can buy less stuff. So whichever country experiences a greater level of inflation, they are not going to be selling as many of their goods because their goods are now relatively more expensive. So let's say the US as an example. If our inflation level is higher than that of Japan, if that's the case, then our goods are now relatively more expensive than those Japanese goods, or in comparison to what they were anyway, they're relatively more expensive. And people go, I don't want the American goods at this point. Or by comparison, they may say, the Japanese goods are more appealing because there's that lower rate of inflation. So if that means demand for American goods have gone down because they're more expensive, the demand for the dollar is going to go down as well. And the supply of dollars on the exchange is going to go up because people are going, even Americans are going, Japanese stuff is relatively cheaper. Let me go get that instead. And so they're trading their dollars and taking yen off the exchange. So this would be a situation, either demand for dollars goes down or supply of dollars goes up. That would be a depreciation, or the price going down for the dollar, and then an appreciation for the yen. Last but not least, we've got interest rate. Now this one is tricky, and the reason it's tricky is because we're going to look at it from the different perspective than we did in aggregate demand. Back in aggregate supply and aggregate demand, I told you guys you always think like a borrower. When we were doing aggregate demand, we always thought like a borrower, and so we liked when interest rates were low because that allowed us to borrow certain things and then spend money in other areas. Right now, because of the crisis, the Fed has lowered interest rates, as you guys saw with the Kashkari interview. They've lowered interest rates to almost zero, which means it's more likely that the people that have not been dramatically impacted economically by this crisis are more willing to make bigger purchases or to take a loan on a car or whatever it might be. They're more willing to spend a greater amount of money at this point because the interest rate's lower. They're able to take out more and pay off less. Their payments are going to be less than typical if that interest rate is lower. However, when we look at exchange rates, we are no longer thinking like a borrower. Now we have to go think like a lender. Okay, so we completely go from the opposite perspective. We no longer think like a borrower when we're talking exchange rates. Now we're thinking like a lender. If I'm thinking like a lender, do I want a high interest rate or a low interest rate? We want a high interest rate, right? We want to take a high interest rate because I'm trying to make that money, right? I want to make as high an interest rate as I can, or as high a rate of return as I can if I'm lending money out, because I want to make money. I want to get that money back. So if the U.S. interest rate is lower than that of Japan, then lenders go, I don't want to invest in the dollar, and the demand for the dollar goes down, the supply of the dollar goes up. It's a depreciation. By comparison, if our interest rates are higher, if our rates of return are higher in the U.S. than in Japan, then people go, we still want to put money in the U.S. And so the demand for the dollar in that case would go up, the supply would go down, the price would go up, and the dollar would appreciate. Now, believe it or not, even as the rates approach zero in the U.S., that is not to say that you couldn't have this exact situation going on, that people are still putting money in the U.S. Because Japan specifically, they actually experimented years ago with a negative interest rate, that they would actually, if you were borrowing money, essentially they paid you, which is, it creates a whole bunch of different issues there, as you might imagine. But if that's the case, if Japan has a negative interest rate and our interest rate is 0.1%, we still have a higher interest rate. People are still going to put their money here. 0.1%, while it's nothing, it's still better than losing money on that. And so the demand for the dollar would go up there, and we'd have an appreciation of the dollar. I know exchange rates are not the most exciting thing in the world. I also know they can be kind of complicated and kind of confusing. So if you guys have questions, please let me know. We'll do some practice on this. And then also, for those of you that are seniors, I know this, I don't know how else to say it. This just sucks right now. I feel for you guys, and I'm really sorry that we're missing out on a number of different things here. Um, I don't know. There's no words that are going to make it okay, but just know that your teachers understand. We're empathetic. We love y'all, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this. And um, definitely hope to see you guys when all this is over, because this has been a really good group. Both juniors and seniors, but especially this senior class, you guys have been real special to me. So I'm sorry that you guys are having to go through this right now. I'll see y'all later.